One, two. Hi guys, how y'all doing? Okay, I can see we've got people coming in. Okay, we're about 5 minutes into this. All right. Can we maybe spend another 1 minute? Maybe other people are still coming. Get a couple of people who are anticipating to join. So just want to see. All right, there we go. We've got more people joining. All right, guys, can you hit me up on the comments? Let me know how's the sound like? No sound. All right, is the sound back? Anyone willing to comment there on the sound? Is the sound okay? Sounds good. All right, I just fixed the mic. All good. All right, thank you, Facebook. Sound is proper. I can see the guys on YouTube. The sound is proper. Perfect. All right. I think with the current people who are here, all right, perfect. All right, I think we'll start now with because I think the issue was the sound which we were trying to sort out, and I think it's now sorted out. All right, guys, welcome to this GCC Factories Requirements Seminar. So unfortunately, it's just going to be a broadcast, and the only way that I can really talk to you is if you send the comments, and I can see the comments coming in from the control computer this side. So if you've got any questions, you can send your questions on the comments. So if you're watching from YouTube, there's a comment section there, and if you're watching on Facebook Live, there's also a comment over there. So today, the whole purpose of this seminar was to actually talk about the whole GCC Factories requirements. And the reason why we decided to do this is because lately we've been receiving like a lot of like emails, phone calls from different people asking what are these requirements. And there's always also like this question about what's the benefit of getting GCC Factories, what is GCC Factories, and so forth. So in this seminar today, I want to cover that. So I'm going to try to be very quick because I know a lot of you are coming from work and you're probably possibly tired, and you need to get some rest, but at the same time you value your education and your career development so much that you are going to spend the next 2 hours with me. So let's get this thing started. So what am I going to talk about today? So the agenda for today's discussion, guys, I'm just going to do a high level and brief introduction of who I am. So if you are watching this and you don't know who I am, I'm Nkululeko Thusini, and I think under the about Nkululeko Thusini, I will talk into details. Who exactly am I, and why am I the authoritative figure to tell you or to talk to you about GCC Factories? I'll do like a 1 minute, 2 minute introduction of who Palucraft is and what do we do, what are we about, and what drives us every single day. And we're going to get into the crux of the matter. What is GCC Factories? Which industries require GCC Factories? I think this question is very important because if you're not aware, you get GCC Factories and you get GCC mines. So for instance, this week there was a gentleman who called and was who's working in a mine but wants to get a GCC Factories, and there's a whole legal background to why GCC Factories applies to certain employers and doesn't apply to other employers. So I'm going to cover specifically which employers need to have this person with a GCC Factories. And then I'm going to talk about why the GCC Factories is so important for employers in the specific industry. So here, when I'm saying in my industry, I'm referring to the point before that. So for instance, if now the industry that you're in is part of the industry where a person needs to have GCC Factories for the role of a GMR 2.1, which is something I'm going to talk about later, then why is it so important for the employers that you have a GCC Factories? And then I'm going to talk about what type of work will you do if you get appointed as a GCC Factories engineer. So you'll notice that in this introduction, I am using GCC Factories very loosely. But as we carry on with the discussion and we get the definitions out of the way, then I'll start using the proper legal terms of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to talk about how do you qualify to obtain the GCC Factories, who can qualify for the GCC Factories. So I'm going to answer all those questions. How do you obtain the GCC Factories? So under this discussion, I'll give you a step-by-step and give you, like a direction on like resources that you can use on how to obtain the GCC Factories and how can I use the GCC Factories to advance my career. So that's also an important question. And one of the questions that like a lot of people who do not understand or who do not know what GCC Factories is all about, they ask this question a lot. Like, okay, so I hear that I can get a high-paying job using this GCC Factories. So how can I actually do that? And I think the other reason why we added this question is because there's a lot of, or not, let me not say a lot, there's a couple of guys or past students of ours who you find that they are artisans. They've got a GCC Factories, but they are struggling to get that GMR 2.1 or even 2.7 appointment, because for you to get the high paying job using your GCC Factories, you would have to get a GMR 2.1 or a GMR 2.7 appointment. But a lot of artisans, they struggle to actually break through the barriers and actually get appointed. And in the last part of today's seminar, I'm actually going to talk about some of the barriers and some of the reasons why I think a lot of people struggle to actually get that GMR 2.1 or 2.7 what you call appointment. Just checking the numbers. Okay, so the numbers are going up nicely. Just checking any comments. All right, no comments. All right, cool. So who am I? So my name is Nkulego Tusini, and I love sharing information and skills. So if you follow me in any of the social platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, I'm always sharing information about how to advance your career in engineering and how to be a better engineer. But I do not limit my discussion on engineers. I also expand my discussion to technicians, to artisans. And the reason why I do this is just because I just love sharing information, and I don't believe in being a knowledge thief. And that forms part of like my bigger vision of what I want to achieve in life. So I am the CEO of Palucraft, and I am also the founder of Palucrafts. But I'll let you know more about Palucraft a bit later. But for now, just know that I'm the CEO and founder and content creator, content contributor, and I lead most of the research that happens in Palucraft. So I'm a mechanical engineer by profession. I've got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from UJ. So anyone from UJ, can I see the thumbs up? Anyone from UJ here? No one. All right. I would have thought that there will be a lot of UJ people. All right. So I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from UJ, and I also got my master's in engineering management also from UJ. I've got numerous certifications such as PRH, CEM, PMP. And okay, I've got over 10 years experience in the engineering industry, and I've worked for companies such as Rand Water, John Thompson Boilers, Eskom, Sasol. So that experience of mine has covered design, maintenance, project management, and leadership. So before I started my own business, which is Pilocraft, I worked for a consulting engineering company where I was a divisional head there, in mechanical engineering. And yeah, so from the consulting engineering field, I did a lot of work with engineering compliance, safety compliance. And that's where I think like a lot of the information that goes into the Pilocraft information and research sort of was born, not come from, but it was born from consulting. And today we've got this thing called Pilocraft GCC study. So who is Pilocraft? What is Pilocraft? So before we go into the details. Okay, there's UJ people are here. Thank you. Before we go into the details of today's discussion, I think it's important that you understand and know who are you talking to and why are these people talking to you and why we have this live broadcast. Now, our history. So for me to really explain to you who exactly is Pilocraft and what Pilocraft GCC study is about, I will have to tell you a brief history of Pilocraft. So in 2014, I registered this company called Pilocraft Pty Limited, and initially the company was going to be an engineering company, but I wasn't really sure what sort of engineering company it is. So, and I knew that I just want to be an entrepreneur. And then fast forward around 2015, I got like very frustrated with the lack of information and the lack of resources that were available for engineers, either junior, mid-level engineers. Like I really felt so frustrated. And one of the biggest frustration was this GCC Factories and the GCC Mines and Works. Now, this frustration led to me starting a engineering blog, right? So the frustration was number one, the lack of information with regards to GCC Factories. Number two, around that time, like I was doing a lot of like design work and a lot of compliance work. So like there was no South African resource where you can just go there and get bounce ideas of people or get information that is relevant for South Africa. Now, for that reason, I started the engineering blog, and this engineering blog then later on changed into the Pilocraft GCC study website. So I kept the element of the blog, but expanded the blog into a more for like a website, right? And the website now added more tools and more resources. So that's when I published the first ebook for GCC Factories, and that was the first tool. And when I first published it, it was actually free of charge. And around that was between 2016 and 2017. And the guys who actually downloaded that free ebook, which later on we started selling for 99 rand, if you believe it or not. So when we started selling it, actually for free and for 99 rand, then people used it. They went to write the plant engineering exam, they passed, and then I was like, oh, okay, so there's something here. So the people who passed, and then they were like, okay, maybe you should add this and remove this and so forth. So then that whole process is how we got to where we are today. Now, fast forward between 2017 and 2019, we started scaling up the whole GCC Factories and developing more material, more content. And today, as we speak, or at least between 2017 and 2019, we were growing very quickly. And today, I can argue that we are the biggest GCC Factories brand in South Africa, and we impact over 2,000 persons per year in the factory space. So if you found us somehow on Google, or you found us somehow on social media, it's because of the whole impact. So that ripple effect from starting very small to where we are today with a community of over 2,000 people that we impact every single year. Fast forward 2019 to 2020, we grew into the business to business sort of model, and we started working with companies. Got appointed by one company to do their GCC Factories training, and then we started getting registered with more companies to help their students with training. You want the book, the 99 Rand one? All right. So, yeah, so we moved to businesses, not moved to businesses, but we included like working with businesses much closer. So previously, our model was purely business to consumer, where we worked directly or communicated directly with what you call engineers, technicians, and artisans. So now we took that, and then there was like a couple of companies who were saying, listen, we've got employees who we want them to get this GCC Factories, can you help? And then we came through and we helped with that. Now, today, we are a combination of a business to consumer and a business to business sort of model. And looking into the future, we are expanding into other professions such as GCC Mines and Works, in the construction side, like SACPM, in the engineering side, the EXA registrations like your PRNG and so forth. So that's like more of the content and resources that are going to come in the future. My vision is actually to be like in the whole of Africa. So that's why we've got the Engineering in Africa podcast that started. So the whole Engineering in Africa podcast, if you look at how it's starting, it's similar to how the GCC Factories started. But the only difference is that Engineering in Africa is starting off as a podcast instead of a blog website, right? So that's but if you go to the Palocraft website right now, you'll see that the Engineering in Africa, we're already starting to add content in that podcast. And so we're just driven by helping students, and all of the content that we create is to help students. And in this case, the students are like people who already have their qualifications. Like you already have your trade test, your N6, you already have your diploma, and you already have your degree. So that's our focus. Now, the Palocraft vision is very simple. We want to contribute positively to the engineering industry. And how we do that is we provide reliable and accessible information that helps engineers, technologists, and technicians advance their careers. So this vision statement also informs our values. And the biggest thing about our values is the sharing of information and making information accessible. Now, so I know there's people who are subscribed to our mailing list, and we will bombard you with information, and you will get all these emails with information. And the whole thing is not to be malicious with like sharing all the information, but the intention is to make sure that at least you've heard it somewhere. And once you've heard it, then you can share it with your friends, colleagues, and we help everybody advance in their careers as engineers, technologists, technicians, and artisans. So what do we do exactly? So today we're talking GCC Factories. So I'm going to concentrate on what we do in GCC Factories. Now, if you haven't visited our website, the important thing to do right now as you're watching this is to just Google Palocraft and go to our website. So the biggest thing that we do is we've got a lot of resources when you want to apply. To get your GCC Factories. So we've got templates that you can use. We've got step-by-step guidelines on how to do it. We've got like there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of tools. So if you just scratch around on our website, you will find it. But if you go to our website and you'll see on top it's written start here. If you hover on start here and click GCC Factories, then it explains how to apply for GCC Factories. It will give you letters, application forms, everything. One of the other big things that we do is we help with preparing for the GCC Factories exam, the plant engineering and the OHS exam. But I will explain later on in the presentation what this preparing is all about and what is this plant engineering and what is this OHS Act exam. So for now, just know that we help you prepare, and how we help you prepare is we've got self-study books. So if you go to our website right now, polycraft-gccstudy.com, you'll see there's if you click books, then you'll find all our books over there. And we do courses, or we used to do courses before lockdown regulations. So unfortunately, we don't do physical courses anymore. And that's why we're doing this sort of session right now. And the reason for this sort of session is because we can't have it physically. So what we used to have open day seminars where we presented exactly what I'm going to be presenting today. However, due to lockdown regulations, this is where we are, and we no longer do physical courses, but we do have e-learning or online courses. Again, if you go to our website and then you again on top on the menu, you'll see online courses. Cool. And we are so big with this whole thing of career development plans. Now, if you are again our subscriber, you'll see that some subscriber to our website and to our mailing list, you will see that a lot of the blog posts are now starting to move towards this career development sort of approach to say, well, you need to start thinking about your career, start planning your career. And that's the information that we've been sharing lately on, okay, what sort of things can you do to advance your career as an engineer, as a technician, or as an artisan working in like a factory space. And we are now expanding into mines, the mining space, and later on to be like construction. Now, if you look at this, the way we've set it up, so we help you apply, prepare, and we help you develop that career development plan for yourself. And the whole motto of Polycraft is that we help you decide, we help you learn, and we help you succeed. So that's the motto of Polycraft. And you'll see that even in our books, our material, we always have decide, learn, succeed. So to get in touch with us, our website, Facebook, we're there, LinkedIn, we're there, Twitter, we're there, and on YouTube, we are there. Now, let's talk about GCC Factories. Now, what is this GCC Factories? So I just want to check the comments so far. Okay, we're looking good. All right, so we still good. We're still good. Guys, do me a favor. If you've got a friend or a colleague who you think they might benefit from this, please send them the link, inform them that we're live right now. I see the numbers are still now. Please share information. If you value sharing, if you value rising with your friends and your colleagues, share this information, share this link, and let's do this. So we're going into the crux of the matter today. Now, what is GCC Factories? The biggest problem or the biggest challenge with many people when it comes to GCC Factories is they don't understand where it actually comes from. And if you don't understand where it comes from, then it becomes just a paper exercise where you're saying, oh, well, I want to get a GCC Factories so that I can get a high paying job. I think the high paying job is the ends to the means. It's not the important thing. The important thing is to understand what is this GCC Factories. And to understand what GCC Factories is, you need to understand the legal context of GCC Factories. Now, if it was a live session, I would be asking questions now. for this discussion, but because it's a bit difficult to have a very interactive session when we are broadcasting live like this. But in any case, what is the supreme law of the land or of South Africa? Is the Constitution. All right. So the whole context of the GCC factories can literally be drawn all the way back to the Constitution, and I'm going to explain how that happens. Now, the supreme law of the land in South Africa is the Constitution of South Africa, and what the Constitution says is the government or the government shall ensure that it protects the lives of all persons, and the all persons who are in South Africa need to protect the lives of all other persons, right? So that's the simple part. The next part that's important in the Constitution has to do with the Bill of Rights. So what the Bill of Rights says is you've got the right to life, you've got the right to security, blah blah blah. But the biggest thing here is you've got the right to life, right? So, and you've got the right not to be hurt, and you've got the equal right or obligation not to hurt others. So that's the important thing. Now, when we read this Constitution and it says you've got the right to security, you've got the right to life, it's a very like open-ended statement, because it does not really specify it, like it doesn't give the specifics on what does that right really mean. Okay. Now, in law, there's the term called residual risk. So when it comes to explaining what your actual rights are, there's that residual risk because it's not very specific. So the specific nature of what it is, what does it mean to protect your life and your safety, and you having an obligation of protecting the other people's lives and safety, is then explained further in the Acts of Parliament, right? So the Acts of Parliament will cover different scenarios, right? So you'll have one of the acts is the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which now talks about how you should protect the lives of people in the workplace. So what the OHS Act is trying to do is that it's trying to address the residual risk that is not addressed by the Constitution, by providing the specific things or the specific provisions that explain how you should protect the lives of others and how your life should be protected. Now, fast forward, if you look at the OHS Act, under Section 8, it talks about the general duties of employers to their employees. Now, if you look at that Section 8 of the OHS Act, it's basically saying employers, you need to ensure the safety and security of your employees. All right. And again, remember also on the OHS Act, there is the duties of the employees, all right, at the workplace. So in that section of the duties of the employees, it's basically trying to say you as an employee also have an obligation to protect the health and safety of the other people and provide security. But today's discussion is not about that. So let's go back to Section 8 of the OHS Act, which is the duties of the employers to their regulations. Now, Section 8.1 says, employer, you shall protect the health and safety of your employees. Section 8.2 of the OHS Act says, okay, I know that I was not specific in what do I mean in Section 8.1 on how you should protect the health and safety of your employees. So therefore, in 8.2, I am saying to you, these are the 8 things or the 9 things that you need to do. Now, one of the 9 things that are under Section 8.2 of the OHS Act is that the employer needs to ensure that machinery is operated under supervision. All right. So what that means is if you are an employer and you've got a machine, you must make sure that that machinery is supervised and it does not hurt people. So again, you ask yourself, okay, but what does that mean? So the minute you ask that yourself, what does that mean? It means that there's a residual risk in that statement as well. So to address that residual risk, Section 43 of the OHS Act gives the minister the power to promulgate regulations that are in the interest of health and safety. Now, if you go to OHS Act Section 43, you will also see that one of the regulations that the minister needs to promulgate has to do, again, with the supervision of machinery. Fast forward, this is how we get to the point where there is the general machinery regulations. Now, remember, there's about 19 regulations which are promulgated in terms of Section 43 of the Act. So what do I mean by regulations promulgated in terms of Section 43? Now, in Section 43, there's a list of what other health and safety regulations the minister needs to promulgate. So, for example, we get the general administration regulations, we get the general safety regulations, we've got the facilities regulations, we've got the major hazard installation regulations, and so forth. So there's a lot of these regulations. Now, I'm not going to go into details on all of those regulations, but I want to just focus on the regulation that affects this whole GCC factories. Right, so let's fast forward. Now we've got the general machinery regulations, which is promulgated in terms of Section 43 of the OHS Act. So under Section 2. Under Regulation 2.1 of the General Machinery Regulations, it says that the employer needs to appoint a competent person to supervise machinery. So before I carry on, I just want to explain something. When it comes to regulations, so you see there, it's written GMR 2.1. And I think there's one question on the comments which is saying, can you explain what's GMR, right? So GMR stands for General Machinery Regulations. So how you read regulations, and remember, guys, as I'm talking, the way that I'm talking is the way that you need to start talking the minute you get your GCC factories or you get appointed as a competent person, because that's what's going to be expected of you. Now, when it comes to regulations, the way if you look at the general machinery regulations, you will see there's it's written 1, and then 1 it's definitions, then it provides the definitions. 2, it's the supervision of machinery, and then it provides like different points. Now, how you read a regulation is that 1 definitions, that's regulation 1. So we will refer to that as GMR 1, right? Then 2 is supervision of machinery, and that is referred to as GMR 2, right? Then under 2, you find that there's 2.1, and sometimes there's no 2 and then 2.1. Sometimes it just starts directly at 2.1, right? So when you go to general machinery regulation 2.1, that's how we read it. General machinery regulation 2.1, that's how we read a regulation. So when a person says GMR 2.1, when a person okay, so there's a resolution issue. Okay, I think it's the internet this side. Okay, yeah, it will be sorted out. Hopefully it will improve. Sorry about that. There's guys saying that the video resolution is not so great. I think the internet is optimizes and then it will clear up. Okay, sorry. So that's what GMR means. It means General Machinery Regulation, and GMR 2.1 means it's the regulation 2.1 from the GMR. Now, GMR 2.1 says, employer, you must appoint a person to supervise machinery. Okay, and then GMR 2. And the person that you must appoint to supervise machinery needs to be a competent person. then you ask yourself, okay, but what does competent person mean? Then GMR 2.4 and 2.5 gives you it gives you those competencies that are expected. Now, 2.4 and 2.5 simply says that, okay, the competency will depend on certain things. So one of those things is the sum of the power that is produced by your premises or your machinery. Now, section 2.4 or GMR 2.4 says that if if the sum of the power generated by the machinery in your factory is less than 1,200 kilowatts, then I am happy that your GMR 2.1 appointee is an artisan with a trade test or a person with 5 years maintenance and operation experience, right? But that experience, and then that person needs to have experience that is relevant to the class of machinery that they are supervising. Okay, so there's two important things when it comes to competency in terms of GMR. Number one is the qualification. Number two is the experience, but not just any type of experience. Experience in the class of machinery that you are meant to supervise. All right. So what does a class of machinery mean? So class of machinery, I'll make an example with transformers. So if you've got a transformer and you've got experience in managing say a 200 kVA transformer, all right? Okay, let me not use transformers. Let's use motors because we're talking kilowatts. Say you've got experience in maintenance and operation of a 500 kilowatt transformer. Now, you cannot now be appointed as a GMR 2.1 appointee for a 10,000 kilowatt motor to supervise a 10,000 kilowatt motor, because in as much as you've got experience in motors, but the class of motor is much lower compared to the higher motor. So that's where the whole the class of machinery becomes important. So the law says if the sum of the power generated by the factory is below 1,200 kilowatts, artisan with a trade test, you can become a GMR 2.1 appointee. If it's between 1,200 kilowatts and 3,000 kilowatts, then you need to have a what you call a diploma plus in the diploma in mechanical or electrical engineering plus 2 years operation and maintenance experience in the class of machinery that you are meant to supervise. Okay, so I want to emphasize class of machinery, and this whole term of class of machinery will become more important as you progress with your career, and you will realize why. Now, then where the sum of the power generated is above 3,000 kilowatts, then this GMR 2.1 needs to be a graduate engineer. So a graduate engineer means a person with a bachelor's degree in mechanical or electrical engineering. Okay, and you need to have passed the GCC Factories OHS Act exam, and you must have at least 2 years experience in the class of machinery that you are you are meant to supervise in terms of GMR 2.1. Okay, or the other option, the other option when the sum of machinery is above 3,000 kilowatts is that you need to have the GCC Factories. Okay, or in other words, you need to be a certificated engineer. So to be a certificated engineer, you need to obtain the GCC Factories. All right, so this is where this GCC Factories comes in. One thing that I want to clarify. So by power generated, are you referring to the sum of the power ratings of the motors on site or plant? So it's So by power generated, it means the power for the actual machinery. Like for example, if you obviously if you've got a 500, for example, a 500 kilowatt motor, it does not necessarily mean that what you call that 500 kilowatt is now going to be converted into mechanical power to be 500 kilowatts of mechanical power, because there's different factors to it. But there is a way of calculating the sum of the power generated. So guys, I think I'm just going to move a bit faster, and then I'm going to deal with the questions when we get to the questions and answers session. All right, maybe some of the questions that you're asking, they're already covered in what I'm going to discuss. All right, so this is where, guys, the whole GCC Factories comes in. One thing that I want to clarify is this. Number one, you don't necessarily have to have a GCC Factories to be appointed as a GMR 2.1. Okay. Provided that the sum of the power generated is less than 3,000 kilowatts. So I'm going to repeat that. You don't have to have a GCC Factories to be appointed as a GMR 2.1, provided that the sum of the power generated in that factory is less than 3,000 kilowatts. So where GCC factories start becoming important is when the power generated is above 3,000 kilowatts, right? So that's the critical thing. Now we've got the sum of the power generated, and the other now in GMR 2.5 now talks about where now you are using this machinery for purely distribution of electricity. So if you are using machinery for distribution of electricity, then you also need to appoint a GMR 2.1 to supervise that machinery. So maybe just to step back, if we look at, for example, GMR 2.4, what machinery am I referring to there? I'm referring to things such as your boilers. All right. So, and I'm not talking small package boilers that you find in hospitals. I'm talking big industrial boilers that you will find in companies like your Tongaat Hewlett, your Escoms, and so forth. What other machinery am I talking about? I'm talking about large conveyor belt systems, because if you look at those systems, they're driven by large motors that drive gearboxes, that drive the whole conveyor system. So I'm talking about large, very big equipment here, and very big mechanical equipment. Now, when it comes to for GMR 2.5, where it's for electricity distribution, the equipment that I'm talking about there is like most predominantly like your transformers and your electrical equipment, such as your motors and the what you call the transmission lines, the cabling, and so forth, right? So if your premises has this electrical equipment that is used primarily for distribution or solely for the distribution of electricity, then you need to appoint a competent person to supervise this machinery. So, i.e., you need to appoint a GMR 2.1. So, but the competency of this GMR 2.1 will depend on the maximum demand that system is pushing. So if it's less than 3,000 kVA, then it can be an artisan with a trade test and a wireman's license, or a person with over 5 years experience working in that environment and working with the supervision of that who has specific maintenance and operation experience to on that class of machinery. Now, when the maximum demand is between 3,000 and 10,000 kVA, then the person needs to have a diploma and a minimum of 2 years experience in maintenance and operation of the class of machinery that they are meant to supervise. And then when it's above 10,000 kVA, then it needs to be a graduate engineer, And again, the graduate engineer is defined as a person with a bachelor's degree in mechanical or electrical engineering, and they must have passed the GCC Factories OHS Act exam, and they must have a minimum of 2 years experience in maintenance and operation of the class of machinery that they need to supervise. Or the shortcut of doing all of the requirements under where the maximum demand is above 10,000 kVA is to just have a GCC Factories, right? So this is again where GCC Factories comes in. And I hope, guys, so far it's very clear what is the legal context of this GCC Factories and under what conditions do you really need to have a GCC Factories. Right. Now, one of the regulations, so remember I said under Section 43 of the OHS Act, the minister will promulgate these regulations, and one of the regulations is GMR, and the other regulation is called the Certificate of Competency Regulations. Now, if you look at the Certificate of Competency Regulation, it provides guidelines on what you need to do to be classified as a certificated engineer. And what the Certificate of Competency Regulation says is that in order for you to be classified as a certificated engineer, you need to pass the GCC Factories OHS Act exam and the plant engineering exams. All right. So this is where now so you'll see now that the question that some people are saying, okay, now where do I write these exams? Who administers these exams and so forth? We'll discuss that in the upcoming sections. All right. Now, once you've passed this OHS exam and this plant engineering exam, then the chief inspector will issue you with your GCC Factories in mechanical or mechanical. And the only time that the chief inspector will issue you this certification called GCC Factories is if what you call the Commission of Examiners recommends that you be issued this certificate. And the only time that the Commission of Examiners can recommend that is if you've satisfied them that you've passed your OHS Act exam and your plant engineering exam. All right, and we'll go into details later on what that means. So, guys, what is GCC Factories? All right, so I'm going to provide a very simple definition. Number one, GCC Factories is simply a license to supervise machinery as required by the General Machinery Regulations. GCC Factories is not a qualification. So there's always been this confusion and debate of whether it's a qualification or whether it's not. Guys, it's not a qualification until such time that there's a NQF, what you call a qualification or a unit standard registered with the South African Qualifications Authority for this for GCC. Then the GCC will become a qualification. But remember, for that to also happen, then you'll need to go and change the general machinery regulations or update the general machinery regulations and the certificate of competency regulations for the GCC Factories to actually be what you call recognized as a qualification, right? As things stand, according to the law, the GCC Factories is just a requirement in terms of the general machinery regulations. It's not a qualification, and this GCC Factories is issued in mechanical or electrical. Now, if you go to our website and then you click blogs, right, we have a detailed discussion on if you've got GCC Factories mechanical, do you need to go get electrical and vice versa. So for the interest of time, I'm not going to go into details in some of these discussions. So I'm just going to discuss it high level, and then you can always go to our website to look at some of these details. So at this point, I'm going to just go through some of the questions so that we don't leave people behind. All right. So there's a question on, okay, by the power generated, are you referring to, right? So by power generated, are you referring to the sum of the power ratings of all motors on site or the plant? That's correct. So any equipment that generates power. So guys, I'm not okay. Let's not now go into a physics 101 lecture, because now we need to now define what is power, and then define what the different types of powers and so forth. I think like that's not the purpose of today's discussion. So power, if you how it's defined from physics and from engineering, that's the power that is what you call is referred to. So if you look at boilers, for example, boilers, they've got if you heat up the water, it produces steam. That steam becomes energy. That energy can then be used to drive a turbine, and that turbine produces a certain kilowatt output, blah, 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 blah. So you see, if we start going into discussion of what does power mean, then it becomes a very long discussion. But I think the long and short of it is that the power referred to here is the power is defined by physics and engineering. Right, so let's see other questions. Okay, sorry, let's see this one. So okay, let's see this one. What the question says. So one will have to be appointed if he's never worked on any type of classroom. And okay, I'm not understanding 100%. So if maybe the less than 500, when will you be able to supervise? Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, right. So remember that, so for the question that I have on screen now, remember that okay, there's a difference between you being appointed as a GMR 2.1 and you gaining experience on that class of gaining experience in the supervision of that class of machinery. So if you've worked in like in normal production, like for example, let me take my experience with ESCOM, right? So if you work for ESCOM and you're a graduate engineer or an EIT, they're not going to come and appoint you as a 2.1 so that you can gain experience in supervising machinery at above 3,000 kilowatts, right? But instead, what will happen is you come in as an EIT and you work under the engineer or the 2.1 who's appointed to do such. And the 2.1 or engineer will then say, okay, do this for me, do that for me. So you will see when we come to what sort of skills you require to be appointed as a 2.1. All those skills, you can obtain them without being appointed as a 2.1. All right. So it's the experience that you will gain from the normal EIT work or just working in a factory environment. So you will get that experience, but you don't necessarily have to be appointed as a 2.1, because the minute you get appointed as a 2.1, then you are now basically the legal appointment and you take the responsibility if anything goes wrong. So whereas if you're coming in as an EIT or as a junior person working under the 2.1, you will get that experience. Then within 2 years, then you've got the experience that is required. I hope that answers that question. So the long and short of this question is, you don't have to be appointed as 2.1 to do to gain the type of work that is classified as supervising machinery. All right. So you can still get the experience. Then once you've gained the experience, then you you apply for jobs where you are considered a 2.1 or you are legally appointed. So where does the BTEC fall? So there's a question about where does the BTech fall in this category. Now I've got sad news for guys with BTechs. The BTech is neither here nor there. So whether you have it or you don't, it doesn't really matter, because the regulations and the DOL rules just talk about the national diploma. Okay, so if you've got a BTech, I am sorry if to to share the unfortunate news that a BTech, it's neither here nor there. So what we'll consider is your national diploma. So if you want to learn more about what I mean by that, just go to our website, go to the blog, and then on under the blog, on the search button, type BTech, and there's a detailed blog post on why BTech doesn't really matter. Can you please share the presentation on your social tags? We really can't see anything. Okay, I think the video was sorted out. It will be time consuming to. Okay, sorry. The video is the what you call the. I thought that the video was fine now. It'll be time consuming right now to try to share it. So we're just gonna keep it moving. If you left the factory and work. Okay, guys, there is a question about if you worked in the factory, left, and then you're working in a non-factory environment. Okay, so this question I'm still going to cover again in later discussions, but let's address it quickly whilst we're still here. It doesn't really matter. So as long as you've had that factory experience, so when you do your application, you will just include that experience. But here's the catch. So if you worked in, like, I'm talking to guys with like 20 years experience, for example, you worked in a factory 15 years ago, and for the past 15 years you've been working in a non-factory environment, they're not gonna consider it. So if you've worked in a factory, say maybe 2 years or let's say 2 or 3 years ago, then they what you call your application might go through, right? So it's not that if now you've changed to consulting, then all of a sudden they exclude you. Okay, so some of the questions, guys, I'm gonna cover in the presentation. So I'm not gonna really answer all of these questions that are here now, so for the interest of time. All right, so for the interest of time, I'm just going to keep it moving. So a lot of the questions that are being asked right now are covered in the presentation. And if they are not, then we will discuss them in details, okay? All right, so are we still good? Can I have thumbs up? Can I have some thumbs up, guys? Anyone? Anyone? Thumbs up, please. Are we still good that side? Guys, Eng Tech. You know, I don't even understand what the purpose of the Eng Tech is, but the regulations have not been updated to talk to this Eng Tech. So I guess if you've got a Eng Tech, then it will be a matter of, if you've got a Eng Tech, then it will be a matter of looking at the NQF levels. I haven't really researched what this Eng Tech is about and what's the NQF level, what's the intention of it. But yeah, I think if you go in the rules, right, there is a provision for, okay, thank you. The thumbs up are coming in. That's what I wanted. All right. So in the rules, there is a provision for other qualifications. Now, the rule of other qualifications, what it says is, if you've got another qualification that is not a mechanical or electrical qualification, then you need to submit it for evaluation and so forth. Now, if you've got a Eng Tech in mechanical, so I would think that that is a mechanical qualification. And if we look at the NQF level and we can match it to either a national diploma or what you call a degree, then I think that will answer that question. So guys, let me move. We've got an hour. And then I'm just going to start moving a little bit faster. Okay. All right, so let's go. So which industries require GCC factories? Now, the important thing of what we've covered so far is we all understand that the from a legal context point of view, the GCC factories is required where you are working for an employer who has machinery, and the sum of the power generated by this machinery is above 3,000 kilowatts. Therefore, you need a GCC factories to be appointed as a GMR 2.1 for that premises or that factory. We agree on that. Ne? Then the other option, if it's above 3,000 kilowatts, the other option is that you need to have a bachelor's in what you call a bachelor's in engineering, mechanical or electrical, and more than 2 years experience, and you must have passed your GCC factories OHS exam. Okay, so to simply answer the question of which industries is to basically look at where you're working. Do you have machinery? That's the first question. Okay, you've got machinery, tick. What is the power generated by that machinery? The power generated by this machinery is less than 1,200 kilowatts, and then you don't have to worry about GCC. Right, so you don't have to worry about GCC factories. If you have it, it's a plus. If you don't have it, that doesn't really matter. If it's below that below 1,200 kilowatts, don't even have to worry about GCC factories. 1,200 to 3,000 kilowatts, maybe, and then, but above 3,000 kilowatts, definitely. Okay. Now, the other scenario is if the employer has machinery that they are using solely for the distribution of electricity, and the maximum demand over a 30-minute period is above 10 megawatts or 10,000. This was supposed to be 10 MVA, not MW. So it's 10 MVA, not 10 megawatts. It's above 10 MVA or above 10,000 kVA, kilovolt ampere, then you must have GCC factories. Okay, I think that's clear, right? And we understand at this point what a we understand at this point what the legal context of GCC factories is. Okay, so let's make examples of these sort of industries. The biggest industry where it employs or should be employing GCC persons with GCC factories is the utilities. Okay, so in the utilities, who are we talking about here? So in utilities, where you've got a boiler plant, where you've got conveyor belts, you've got all these processes, to provide water and steam, then you need to have a GMR 2.1. So an example would be like at ESCOM. It's an obvious example. So that's why there's a lot of guys from ESCOM who are getting this, who are pushing to get this GMR, who are pushing to get the GCC factories. If you're working at companies that produce steam as part of their processes, for example, Tongaat Hulat, Sasol, for example, they've got boilers which they use to produce steam, and the steam is used for their processes. So if you look at chemical industry, you've got these complex power consuming processes, right? So if you've got like large rollers which you are using for your process, then you would need to have a GMR 2.1 with GCC factories. If you've got complex power consuming conveyors, so if you look at industries like FMCG industries, you find that they've got like hundreds and hundreds of motors in their facility, and the minute you add up all of those, then you start what you call playing in the above 3,000 kilowatt range, right? So these are companies like your Unilever, P&G, and so forth. And you've got industries like foundries. So in foundries and heavy engineering, so where you are using a lot of heat consuming processes. So for example, in ArcelorMittal, you will be using the smelters so to smelt the iron and whatever. But for you to be able to produce that amount of heat to melt all that steel, then you need to use a lot of energy or a lot of power. So those are the heat consuming processes. So guys, here's a summary of the some of the big players or the big companies where having a GCC factories will play a very important role in advancing your career. Okay, so utilities, chemicals, FMCG, foundries, heavy engineering, ceramics, guys, companies like Afrisem, PPC Cement. So there's a lot of companies on the tobacco side. So tobacco will fall under like sort of FMCG. I know they're maybe not classified as FMCG, but like your big what's this British American tobacco. There's the liquor guys. So the liquor guys like AB and Dev, Heineken, I've sort of bulked them up under the complex power consuming processes. So it's all about the power that is being consumed by the facilities. And when it comes to distribution of electricity, then that will be more of your utilities like your ESCOMs, your municipalities, and so forth. Right. So there's the solar guys now coming in who are building these large solar projects. So the minute that the power that you are producing in those solar installations starts exceeding the what you call these thresholds, then you need to have your GMR 2.1 appointment, and the GCC factories will start playing a critical role. So why is the GCC factories important for employers in my industry? So remember, context of my industry is the industries that I've just explained, and the example of employers that I've just provided. Okay, so why is it important? So why employers need GCC factories? I think the answer is straightforward now, because we understand the legal context and we understand where this whole thing comes from. So the obvious reason is to meet GMR legal requirements. Okay, so if what you call an employer does not comply to the general machinery regulations. So remember, GMR means general machinery regulation. So if an employer does not does not comply to GMR, then they are not complying with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And if they're not complying with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, therefore they are breaking the law, and there is ramifications for that. All right. So employers want you to have a GCC factories because they are producing the sum of the power produced by its machinery is above 3,000 kilowatts, or the distribution of electricity, the maximum demand is above 10,000 kVA. Therefore, they need to meet these legal requirements. Right now, the other reason is employers want assurance that the health and safety of their employees is protected. So what do I mean? Now, one of the things about GCC factories is that you're gonna write the Occupational Health and Safety Act exam. Now, the OHS Act exam covers the requirements for the act itself and the regulations. So by the time you're finished studying for that exam, writing that exam, and passing that exam, you will have the basic knowledge and basic understanding of what you need to comply with in terms of the OHS Act and its regulation. And once you are able to understand that, then me sitting here as an employer, I've got some assurance that no, if I take this guy and I say, please be in charge or look after my machinery, then I know that you are going to make sure that you are complying with the OHS Act and you are complying with the regulations. Therefore, you are protecting the health and safety of my people. Employers, they want assurance of this OHS Act and regulation compliance. Employers want comfort that their assets will be protected. Now, if you look at the GCC Factories plant engineering exam, the big focus of the plant engineering exam has to do with sizing of machinery. It has to do with maintenance considerations that you need to think about for machinery. It has to do with operational considerations, right? So if you have a GCC Factories and I bring you to my plant, at least I know that you've got some basic engineering and some basic understanding of these engineering concepts, and you are not going to now take my boiler and operate it above its what you call its maximum allowables, because when you did your GCC Factories, there's a section on boilers that says a boiler must be operated it must not be operated above its maximum allowable. Here, these are the reasons, right? There's a section in GCC Factories which says, well, if you've got a pressure vessel, this is how you calculate the minimum wall thickness. So me as an employer, if you've got those basic understandings of engineering, then I've got some comfort that you're not gonna operate my equipment to failure. There's some assurance that there's some basic considerations that you would take into account when you make decisions. There's assurance that you will follow the basic maintenance best practices. There's sections in the plant engineering exam which talks about how to reduce, or at least on our content, how to ensure the optimum performance of a boiler, how to ensure that you're reducing your mean time between failures and so forth. So if you've got that basic understanding of these maintenance principles, then me as an employer, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, yeah, no, you will make sure that I don't waste money with maintenance, and I plan all my maintenance and I don't have all these downtimes. Okay, so if you're asking yourself now, what does this GCC Factories engineer will be doing in the factory? Or you're probably asking yourself, what is the role of the GMR 2.1? Okay, I've just summarized it over there. So once you get appointed as a GMR 2.1, you need to ensure that the premises where you are appointed is in compliance with GMR, is in compliance with OHS Act, it's in compliant with all the other 19 regulations. Okay, it's in compliant with engineering standards, it's in compliance. So all the compliance is sitting on your shoulder. So this is a huge role. It's a very big role, and that's why for bigger factories where the risk is very high, then that's where the salary also speaks to that risk. Okay, so you are asking yourself, no, but then why do people keep saying that when you've got a GCC Factories, you're gonna get a high paying job? Well, you're only gonna get a high paying job if you get appointed in a factory with a high risk and you're appointed as a GMR 2.1. So now the trick is to get that GMR 2.1, and I'm hoping to share some advice on how you're gonna get that in this presentation today. So I'm gonna fast forward on the questions, because I think the questions that I'm seeing are answered in in the presentation, and I will review the questions again to see if indeed I've answered them. Right. So what work would you be doing as a GMR 2.1? In order for you saw the slide, in order for you to be able to do all of this, you need to, number one, have the skills, knowledge, and ability to identify and eliminate any hazards in the premises. And by the premises, I mean where this machinery is kept. You need to identify and eliminate hazards and risks. Okay. And actually, you need to be able to what you call to have the intuition and the experience to foresee what can go wrong. Right. You need to devise engineering controls for these premises. You need to devise administrative controls, and you need to provide leadership and people management in these facilities. So, what does all of this mean? When it comes to identifying and eliminating hazards and risk, you need to have above average HIRA. So, for the guys who are working in factories, if you don't know what HIRA is, hey, then we've got a very big problem. HIRA is hazard identification and risk assessment. Your understanding and your use of the different HIRA tools must be above average. All right. So you can't just come there and there's an incident that happens and you don't know the basics on how to investigate this incident. So this can be an incident related to a machine failure or a health and safety, whatever the incident. When it comes to identifying and eliminating hazards or risk, you will need to understand the OHS Act, the regulations, and standard compliance. Because not complying to OHS Act regulations and standards is a risk for the employer and it's a risk for the premises. Because why is it a risk? Because the inspectors can come and they can close down that factory. Closing down the factory, what does it mean? It means loss of production. Loss of production, loss of revenue. Loss of revenue, loss of jobs, right? So it's a very big role, guys. This is not a small role that you think that no, I'm just doing it for the money. So you need to make a very serious decision right now that if you are going to go this route, you are willing and able to take on the responsibilities and the accountability that will come with this role. When it comes to engineering controls, you need to put measures to protect the health and safety of the people there in the premises. Okay. You need to ensure that if there's any changes that you are making in the premises, right, to implement these engineering controls, there must be proper change management that happens. Best practice change management. Now, if you look at change management, one of the modules that is covered under the plant engineering exam is what is called the Occupational Health and Safety Management System. And this OHS management system, what the syllabus says is that it needs to be done in accordance with an acceptable standard. So an acceptable standard right now is ISO 45001. Now, if you do not understand the basic principles of ISO 45001, then your job as a GMR 2.1 will be very difficult, because the provisions of ISO 45001 speaks to the issues of hazard identification and risk assessment, identifying the regulatory compliance that is required for your premises. It speaks to how to protect the health and safety of people, of persons in the premises. It speaks to how to manage change. Okay. You need to ensure when it comes to administrative controls, you, Mr. GMR 2.1, you need to make sure that there are procedures for every activity that's happening in your premises. You must have the policies in place. You must have internal standards in place. And you are going to be the one who's approving all the maintenance and operation in their facilities. Now, from what I'm saying, if you're already feeling that, yes, this feels like it's a lot of work, it's a lot on my shoulder, then you need to start rethinking whether getting the GCC factories is really for you or it's not for you. One of the things that I always emphasize is that GCC factories is not for everyone. A lot of people will tell you, no, get your GCC factories so that you can get a high paying job. But if you do not have the temperament and the leadership and people management skills, the ability to put administrative controls in place, to put engineering controls in place, to identify and eliminate hazards and risks, then it's not for you. You're going to struggle in that position and you're going to hurt people. Now, when it comes to leadership and people management, you need to be able to lead teams. If you are very shy, you can't lead people, you can't discipline people, you can't tell people what to do, how to do it, you can't be assertive, and you cannot be sure of what you are saying, then you're going to have a very difficult job in fulfilling the role of a GMR 2.1. So this is why it's very important that you do not rush, even when you get your GCC factories, you do not rush to be appointed as a GMR 2.1 if we haven't gained all these necessary skills that I have on the slide right now. Now, do you qualify to obtain these GCC factories? So I've given you in the previous slides to say, no, for you to get the GCC factories, you must pass the OHS Act and the plant engineering. But for you to pass those two exams, you must first be accepted to write those exams. And the person who accepts you to write those exams is the Department of Employment and Labor. All right. So for you to get that permission, then you need to submit your application to the Department of Employment and Labor to say, hey, I want to write these exams because I believe that I've got the qualifications and I believe that I've got the experience to write these exams. Okay. So now in the upcoming slides, I'm going to talk about what qualifications are acceptable, number one. Number two, what experience is acceptable. Okay. Now let's look at this requirements to qualify. So by qualifying, I'm repeating myself here, guys. I'm talking about for you to write the GCC Factories exams, labor needs to give you permission to go write the exams. Now, for them to give you permission to write the exams, there's three major routes or three major ways in which you can achieve this milestone. Okay, so the first route is if you've got a bachelor's in engineering, in mechanical or electrical engineering. So that's the qualification that is required. Now, do you have a mechanical or electrical engineering degree? Yes, no. If your answer is yes, then you are under this route one. Okay. If your answer is no, wait for your route is coming. Now, what sort of experience must you have in order for Department of Labor to at least consider you to go write this exam? Well, you need to have a minimum of 2 years in maintenance and operation of mechanical or electrical machinery. All right. So you will notice that I've been saying experience in mechanical or electrical. Now you can have a mechanical degree, but have experience in electrical machinery. And what you will do is you will then apply to be considered for the GCC factories in electrical. And the opposite also applies. If you are mechanical and you've got mechanical experience, then you will apply for GCC factories in mechanical. Okay. Then if you've got a bachelor's in electrical, then the same permutations apply. Okay. So if your answer is no to this line, then you need to wait for your for the next routes. Maybe you qualify under those routes. Route number 2. Do you have a national diploma in mechanical or electrical engineering? Now, guys, it's important here because this is where I think a lot of confusion comes in. There is a difference between a national diploma and a national technical diploma. All right. So I will touch on the difference between the two once I've presented route 3. Now, let's talk about route 2. qualification. Question number 1, do you have the national diploma in mechanical or electrical? So this is normally your S courses, ne? S courses, previous T courses. In the old Technicon, they used to call them T. In the current what you call institutions, they call them S courses. So this is the diploma that you will do, for example, at VUT, at TUT, at UNISA. That's the type of diploma that I'm talking about here, okay? Now, that national diploma that you have you passed all your subjects by at least 50%? Yes, no. If there's one subject that's less than 50%, you don't meet the requirements. You must go rewrite that subject. Either you rewrite the exam if the institution will allow you, or you go and redo that subject in order for you, and then get 50% in order for you to be considered eligible. Okay. Now, number 3, do you have the minimum subjects required? Now, the subjects required here are not these the normal N subjects required that a lot of people keep referring to. The subjects here is when you go to the requirements from labor, they talk about the plant engineering syllabus. Okay. Now, the plant engineering syllabus, it's very difficult for a person from who has a national diploma to say, well, my syllabus was aligned or it was not aligned. So my advice that I always give to people with a national diploma, submit your application. There's no minimum, there's no N subject courses that you are supposed to do before you submit. All right. That's a very important point for the national diploma guys. Okay. Submit your application, and then the labor will say, okay, looking at your curriculum, we are satisfied that your curriculum covered all the elements of the plant engineering syllabus that we expect. Okay. There is no minimum subjects per se. It's just that the curriculum for your qualification needs to have covered most, if not all, of the plant engineering syllabus that Department of Labor expects. Okay. Now, from our experience, what we have seen, the national diploma guys in mechanical usually don't have a problem. The people who usually have problems is the national diploma in electrical engineering, because with electrical engineering it gets a bit tricky, because now there's guys who do light current, heavy current, and then there's guys who do heavy current but then they don't elect certain subjects, right? And you find that those subjects now put them in a situation where their curriculum is no longer aligned with the plant engineering. So that's where you apply as an electrical, and then they come back, they say, no, you need to do 1 or 2 subjects. All right. But my advice is very simple. Don't waste time trying to figure out your subjects and so forth, because for the national diploma, it's not clear cut to say these are the subjects, these are not the subjects. Okay. Just submit your application. A lot of guys, national diploma, waste a lot of time with this subject thing. Just submit your application. BTech, there was a question about BTech. BTech guys, you fall under Route 2. All right. So that's the long and short of it. BTech guys, you fall under Route 2, and what they look at will be your national diploma. And if in your BTech you did some engineering subjects, then they will consider, because I know that some BTech modules, you find that they cover more management stuff, which sometimes is not what they are looking for GCC. Okay. Now, you've answered the question. For Route 2, you've answered the question. Do you have a national diploma? Yes, I do, in mechanical or electrical. You are in Route 2, you've got, you passed all your subject, minimum 50%, yes. For point number 3 on qualifications, submit your application. Don't waste your time in trying to figure out the subjects. Let's look at experience. You must have your post qualification experience of 2 years in maintenance and operation of mechanical or electrical machinery. All right. So this is P1 and P2 experience does not count. So if you've got a national diploma and you did your P1, P2, and you want to put it does not count, because when you were doing your P1 and P2, you don't have your qualification as yet. right? So you need to go complete your P1, P2, get your diploma, and then that's when your experience starts counting. So if you did your P1, P2, and you're waiting for results and and you have not yet gotten your diploma, but you started working for 1 year, that 1 year is cancelled. It's not cancelled, but it won't count in terms of evaluating your experience. Okay. So this is when you finish P1, P2, you've got your diploma, and then you're good to go. Now, the 2 years experience that you have in maintenance and operation, at least 1 year of that 2 years needs to be in a factory. Okay, so what is a factory? The industries that we've discussed earlier, that's what you would define as a factory. All right, so if you've got experience in those sort of industries, 1 year of it, then you're good. And of that 1 year, you've got another year in maintenance and operation of mechanical or electrical machinery, then you're good. Okay. And I think, guys, there's people who maybe are asking, but what do you mean maintenance and operation experience? The same experience and the requirements that I spoke about, where I was talking about putting engineering controls in place, ensuring compliance to OSHA and regulations, administrative controls. So administrative controls, do you have experience in writing maintenance procedures? Do you have experience in developing quality control plans for maintenance activities? Do you have experience in developing checklists for operation, right? So that's what maintenance and operation experience means, okay? Now, route 3. Route 3 is for guys with a national technical diploma. So this is what is normally referred to as when you've done like your N courses, all right? So now here you need to have your N6 national diploma, all right? And it needs to be in mechanical or electrical engineering, okay? That's the first requirement. Do you have an N6 diploma in mechanical or electrical? If your answer is yes, okay, let's move on to the next step. Step number 2, have you obtained at least 50% on all your subjects? Yes or no? If the answer is no, the subjects that you've got less than 50% must go redo, pass the exam, and get the above 50%. Right. Do you have an acceptable trade? And here I'm referring to do you have acceptable trade test, i.e. you've got your trade test as an electrician, qualified electrician. So in other words, that that N4 level for, let's look at the electrical guys. You're an electrician, N4, you did your trade test, you've got the certificate from QCTO, so that will be an acceptable trade, right? Do you have a boiler maker? Boiler making is an acceptable trade. Welders, acceptable trade. So there's a whole list of acceptable trades, and I'm not going to go through all the acceptable trades. If you go to our blog, in our website, in the blog, we talk about all those acceptable trades there. Okay. Now here's the tricky part here with route 3. Now under route 3, on the list of acceptable trades, there is a minimum subjects that you need to do. Okay. Now, again, what minimum subjects am I referring to? If you go to our website, we list all those minimum subjects. I think it will be time consuming if we go through those minimum subjects one by one. So for the interest of time, that whole list is there in our website, and you can go through that whole list. Now, when it comes to experience, you need to have a minimum of 2 years experience in maintenance and operation. But here's the tricky part about route 3. Depending on your trade, they may require you to have more than 2 years experience. What do I mean? If you look at, for example, if you are like a boiler maker, right, they will say you must have minimum 3 years experience. Okay, so the amount of experience depends on your specific trade. The other requirement is that of the experience of the minimum experience for your specific trade, you must have a minimum of 1 year of that experience in a factory. Again, what is a factory? We've defined it in our previous discussion. Okay, so big confusion here is the guys in route 1. It's straightforward, I believe. The guys in route 2 is that sometimes it gets confused with route 3. So if you are in route 2, my advice is stop wasting time asking what subjects must you complete and start asking a lot of questions. If you've got your diploma, you've passed all your subjects with minimum 50%, you've got over 2 years experience in maintenance and operation, and of your experience, at least 1 year is in a factory. Submit your application. Whether that experience you got it 3 years ago, you got it a year ago, it's neither here nor there. Okay, but they do remember that the experience, when they evaluate it, is to the discretion of the Commission of Examiners. So where the discretion starts mattering, right, or starts playing a role, is the example that I made to say you did your maintenance and operation experience 20 years ago, and your factory experience 20 years ago. For the past 15 years, you've been working in consulting or whatever the case may be, and then now you want to apply for GCC Factories today. There's a very high chance that they will reject your application. And the reason for that is the discretion that the Commission of Examiners is using, because they can simply argue that, listen, man, you haven't been in this space for a very long time, so you might be very rusty, right? So rather get employment in this factory space for another 2 years and then reapply. Okay. Now, the guys in route 3, these are our artisans. Artisans, your requirements are a bit more in terms of quantity, and they are a bit more stringent, right? And if you are sitting here right now, you're listening to this and you're an artisan, getting your your GCC Factories, it's one of the biggest things that you can do for your career as an artisan if you want to climb the supervision management role. But if you're an artisan and you are happy with your trade and you're very happy, doing your boiler making, your welding, you're being an electrician, there's nothing wrong with that. You can carry on and take the technical route, and don't waste your time with GCC Factories. So my simple advice is that, so should you do GCC Factories or not? The simple answer is, if your career goal is to go the route of being a supervisor, a manager, engineering manager, section manager in the future, then get your GCC Factories, definitely. But if your career ambitions is to say, nah, you just want to work as a technical person and stay technical, then don't waste your time with the with GCC Factories, because you're gonna get it and then it's just gonna collect dust. Right. So let's look at the others. So the others is guys who, let's look at qualifications. For example, chemical engineers. So you find that sometimes you are a chemical engineer and you are working for like a Sasol, and by virtue of working in that environment, you end up dealing with maintenance and operation issues, right? And by virtue of that, you end up gaining experience in maintenance and operation. And because you are so experienced, now they want to appoint you as a GMR 2.1. And you're saying, well, for a chemical engineer in this example, the only option that you have is you need to get your GCC Factories. Now, the Department of Labor does allow other qualifications, all right? But they will only consider other qualifications on merit. What does consider other qualifications on merit means? What it means is, again, I'm making an example with the chemical engineer, all right? You need to they need to evaluate your qualification to say, okay, in your qualifications, did you cover the minimum content that would be expected from a mechanical or an electrical person? Now, what the rules from Department of Labor say is that you need to submit your qualification to Department of Education, and then Department of Education will evaluate your qualification against the plant engineering syllabus from the Department of Labor, and then they will issue you. Department of Education will issue you with a letter to say these are the subjects that you must do, or they will issue you with a letter to say no, your syllabus is actually sufficient. Okay, now theoretically that's how it's supposed to work, but if you look at the documentation and the guidelines and everything, the department that's supposed to do that evaluation in the Department of Education is either it does not exist anymore or the information is lost somehow. So if we already asked Department of Labor to assist us with that, to say, okay, your requirements are saying these people with other qualifications must get them evaluated by education. Can you provide us with the direct person where this must happen? Because there's a lot of people now who are saying, okay, they submit to Department of Education. Department of Education says, we don't know what you're talking about. All right. So there's a lot of people where that exact thing has happened. So my simple advice for those people is to say, look, if in Department of Education there is no one who's doesn't know about this, then submit your application to labor. And then once you submit it to labor, then labor will advise. So until we get more clarity with that, if you've got other qualifications but you work in the factory environment in maintenance and operation of mechanical or electrical machinery, submit your application with labor. That's the long and short of it, right? So the other requirements, remember, the other requirement is that you must be at least 23 years of age. So this again becomes important because especially for the Route 3 guys, because I know some guys, you can qualify as an artisan at a very young age and get your N6 at a very young age and get that experience at an age before 23. But you will have to wait until you're 23 to submit your application. So that's an important thing, especially for the Route 3 guys. If you are lucky in the Route 1 or 2 and you meet the requirements before you are 23 years of age, then you must just wait until you're over 23 to submit. So guys, those are the qualifying requirements. Okay, how do I obtain the GCC factories? So to obtain the GCC factories, guys, I think I've sort of touched on it already in this presentation. So I'm going to fly through this slide. Step 1, complete your application forms. What application forms? Go to polycraftgccstudy.com, go hover around start here, click GCC factories, and in that page, if you go through it, we provide the information on what application forms we are referring to here. Collate all your supporting documents. Again, the supporting documents on our website, we provide templates for the supporting documents. We provide the supporting documents that you need to complete. So the purpose of today's presentation is not to go through each and every supporting document and start workshopping it. Now, pay the application fee. So I think it's still, what is it, 120 or 150 Rand. So on the official application form, there are banking details and the amount that you need to pay. So this is the official form that we got from the Department of Employment and Labor. Send your application to Department of Employment and Labor and you will receive your response. Now, you can download the standard application on our website or from the Department of Employment and Labor website. If you go to the Department of Labor website, if you can find it, good. But if you want to find it much faster, come to our website and you will find it much faster. All the documents are on one page. Right. Then collate your supporting documents, so cover letter, exemption letter, qualification, statement of results, sobriety letter, record of experience, that identity document. So it's 130 rand. Okay, so pay the 130 rand to the account details provided on the application form. Send your application. Our advice, make sure that you courier your documents. And then the other advice that I'll give you, when you get people to sign your documents, make them sign like 2 or 3 of the same documents. The reason for that is that, especially for your letter of sobriety, for example, you submit for the letter of sobriety, you are submitting the originally signed document. Now, if your application gets lost or whatever, then you have to go and try to get the people to sign your letter of sobriety again. Okay, so my advice, when you go and get people to sign your documents, let them sign like 2 or 3 of the same copy, right? And explain to them that no, the reason why you're doing that is because you are you just mitigating the risk of your documentations getting lost. Guys, take that advice very seriously. There's guys who lost their documents, and then when they try to go get their letters again to get signed, now they can't get the guy, or the guy is difficult in in signing those documents. Now, it used to take anywhere between 2 and 8 weeks for labor to respond. I know there's guys who've been complaining or saying that yes, they've submitted like 3 months ago, they haven't received the response and whatever. So with this whole lockdown and COVID, it is taking much longer for them to respond. So once you've submitted and you want to follow up, here's the email address that you need to use. So it's liema.mofokeng@labour.gov.za. All right. So that's where, don't pester Liema, because the thing with a lot of guys is they'll submit their application today, and then tomorrow they email Liema, did you receive my application? I submitted it yesterday. This guy receives like hundreds and hundreds of emails. So if you're gonna keep pestering him with those type of queries, then he's a human being. So don't do that. Like, submit your application, wait another 2 or 3 weeks, then do your follow-up. Okay. Now, how can I use my GCC Factories to advance my career and get that high-paying job? So I've already given you some clues, but here I'm going to summarize them. Number 1, the most critical thing for a GMR 2.1 position is your leadership skills. I've interacted with, especially the artisans. Like, when it comes to artisans and leadership skills, sometimes they lack that leadership skills, that authority, that authoritativeness that you need for a GMR 2.1 appointment, right? So I'm not picking on artisans, but I'm just saying it's a general observation. And the artisans that I've mentored and have advised, even when I'm speaking to them, like, you can see that they lack that confidence, they lack that leadership, that directing people. And when you ask them, right, that would you be able to direct and lead a team of like 10 or more people, then the answer is like, no, maybe not. 10 is too much. Then it's going to be very difficult for you to secure that GMR 2.1 position. So it's very important that you get the right leadership skills. And what leadership skills do you need? You need to learn how to manage other people. You need to know how to manage a business. So by managing a business, remember that you are now, most positions of a GMR 2.1, you basically the cost code owner, right? So when you're a cost code owner, you need to know how to do budgets. You need to manage the leaves of your people. You need to plan the leave of your people. You need to plan the activities in your department, right? So that requires basic management skills. You need to have financial management skills. You need to know how to read an invoice. So you take that for granted, like reading an invoice, a statement of account, drawing up a budget, those simple things that you might take for granted. You need those things. And again, I'm not picking on artisans, but it's just that by virtue of like when you're an artisan, by virtue of like the sort of role that you play in effect your in a working environment, you don't get exposed to some of these things because you find that most of the time you're just working, you're just executing like the boiler making, the welding. So you're in the grind all the time, and you never work at that level where you're doing the business management, or you're considering like the business the business consideration, financial consideration. Communication, guys, is huge. Now, the communication, I just pick it up from your CV. So the minute I get your CV, I can already pick up that your communication sucks because you are unable to communicate your skills and your proficiency. So you need to have that communication skills to write reports, to communicate in presentations, and so forth. You need to be able to manage conflict. You must be emotionally intelligent, and all of those leadership skills that I'm referring to there. I'm not gonna discuss them in details. I'm saying that's what you need, and look out for the courses that are gonna come from Palucraft, and they will be covering a lot of these leadership skills. So those courses will be covered under the what you call the Palucraft Engineering Academy. Now, technical skills. You need to know the SEN standards. You need to know how to read a drawing, right? You need to know how to compile a quality control plan, right? You need to know how to size equipment, how to, if you've got problems in your system, how to optimize the system, and so forth. All right. And then your safety skills, again, hazard identification, risk assessment, OHS Act regulations, and so forth. Now, having your GCC factories is not enough if you do not have these 3 skills. The reason why you've got your GCC factories and you're not being considered for these GMR 2.1 positions is because you don't have these skills, and in some instances you do not have the experience in applying these skills. And if you don't have these skills and the experience of applying these skills, then the employer does not have confidence in you that you will actually fulfill the role of a 2.1 successfully. Now, what's the short answer of what I'm saying to you here? If you've got your GCC factories, look at these skills and evaluate yourself between a scale of 1 to 10. If you're not scoring more than 8 in any of the skills, these minimum skills that I have here, then it's difficult for you to justify any employer to say, yeah, you can become my GMR 2.1. So how do you gain the skills? You gain the skills working under a GMR 2.1 or getting an appointment as a GMR 2.7. So remember, a 2.7 will be an assistant to a 2.1. Okay? Get experience, work under a 2.1, work as a supervisor, manage a team, lead a team, manage a cost center, manage a budget. And guys, that's the end of my presentation. So it's 2 minutes to 8, and I'm going to look at some of the questions that have been raised. And I'm thinking that most of the questions have been answered. Now, just to see if everyone is still alive, can I start getting some thumbs up from the people? Just want to see that everyone is still listening and alive. All right. All right. So here's an important question. Does it mean that if I choose electrical, then I write the electrical exam? All right, guys. The electrical and the mechanical guys write exactly the same exam. There's no difference in the exams. You both write the exact same exam. The only difference is that when they issue the certificate, it will write electrical. If you applied for GCC Factories electrical, and if you applied for mechanical, it will write mechanical. But you write exactly the same OHS exam, you write exactly the same plant engineering exam. So today's discussion was not on what is included in the exam. So today's discussion is on what the requirements are for you to actually get into the GCC factories and succeed with that. So maybe we'll do another live session to discuss the actual exam. But if you want a detailed discussion of what is in the exam, if you buy what you call our plant engineering book or OHS book, it describes it in detail what's in the exam, what to expect, how to approach it, and so forth. So if you are preparing for your exam, your best option or your best bet is to get our books. Alternatively, you can enroll on our online course. And in our online course, again, we explain in detail what's in the exam, how to prepare, and what's the strategies. So mechanical, electrical, you write exactly the same exam. All right. So there's a question, if you are a mechanic engineering diploma, then you won't be considered. Okay, the question is not clear, but I think I'm assuming that the question might be related to the trades. So if you've got a what you call like you're a diesel mechanic, you can be considered, provided that number one, you will get your N6. Number two, you will get the minimum of 3 years maintenance and operation experience, but that experience needs to be in a what you call in a factory environment. So it can't be just your experience in working as a diesel mechanic. That won't count. All right, guys, let's cover some of the more questions. Okay, for someone who has an industrial engineering. All right, so here's another one. Industrial engineering, 8 years experience, 6 experience in maintenance and commissioning of mechanical. What would it take? So industrial engineering, if you were listening to the example that I made for chemical engineering, exactly the same thing. Okay. So my advice, if you've got the industrial engineering bachelor's degree, submit your application with labor. With theoretically how it's supposed to work is you must take your industrial engineering qualification to the Department of Education for them to evaluate it against the GCC factories. All right. But that department, it's either it no longer exists or the contact details have been lost, because when you send your application to Department of Education, most of the time all of the time they don't know what you're talking about, right? So submit your application with labor, and I've seen labor helping some guys who have other qualifications, who haven't gone that route of going to Department of Education. So submit your application, and then labor might say to you, okay, do this one or two subjects. Okay. So if you're industrial engineering, you are eligible, just submit your application, and labor will advise if there's any additional subjects that they want you to do. Okay, thanks for the great info. Thanks, Andrew. Hudson. So if you have a mechanical engineering diploma, you will be considered. Yes, Hudson, you will be considered. Do you need to make a portfolio of evidence? Okay, Kahisho, not necessarily a portfolio of evidence. So what you will submit is there's going to be 2 documents. So there'll be the qualification and experience record. So if you want a template of that, go to our website, go to hover around the start here, click GCC Factories. When you read there's a section on the documents. Click that documents. It will take you to all the documents that you require. On all those documents that you require, one of those documents is the qualification and experience record. Complete that. That sort of covers the in inverted commas your portfolio of evidence. And then the other document that you need to submit is your experience record. So your experience record letter, it's like a mini CV. I think the Americans call it a resume. So it's like a mini CV for your different roles, and you need to again submit that. So that mini CV needs to be signed by your employer or if your employer is unable to sign it for whatever reason, you can get it signed by a commissioner of oaths. So we're not going to dwell too much on the documents. They're all on our website. Can you apply with an international qualification? Right. International qualification. So if you've got an international qualification, so it's a question from Drian. So yes, you can. So with the international qualification, it's a bit easier because there's already what you call to convert. Is it called converting? But to get your qualification to be evaluated by Department of Education, you can submit it to the what you call Department of Education, and then they will take your qualification and they will say it's equivalent to whatever qualification from South Africa, and this is the NQF level. So let me give an example. Say you've got a degree in mechanical engineering from Australia. You will submit it to Department of Education for evaluation, and then Department of Education will evaluate it and maybe say your mechanical engineering degree is equivalent to the South African mechanical engineering degree NQF level, blah, 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 right? Then you're going to take that letter from Department of Education and attach that as your submission to labor. And an important thing about international, right? So if you've got maintenance and operation experience outside of South Africa, when you apply, you need to have at least 1 year experience in a factory in South Africa. So say you've worked for 10 years in Australia in a factory, and then you're trying to apply for GCC factories in South Africa, then they what you call they may or might reject your application on the basis that you don't have that minimum 1 year experience in a factory in South Africa. Okay, that covers that question. Okay, let's see what this one says. Okay, thanks for the guys who are still who are still live. Appreciate it. So we're just covering questions and answers now. I'm just taking all the questions from the chat. So this question: should a person who signs the letter of sobriety only be someone with a GCC? So here's the good news about GCC factories. The person who signs your letter of sobriety does not have to have a GCC factories. So it can be like your direct supervisor. It can even be your HR, like the HR manager in your business or whatever, right? So GCC factories, the person who signs it does not have to have a GCC factories. Okay, that answers that question. Or you can come to any person who was supervising. Yeah, so it can come, your letter of sobriety can come from any person who was supervising you. Okay, you want, I'm assuming Liama's email. Okay, we'll share that. Okay. Right, so there's the email. Right, where are we now? So the guys who wanted the email, you sorted, ne? Right, so let's look at the other questions. Thank you for the thumbs up, for everyone who's doing with the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Congratulate. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. All right. So here's a question. If your mentor is at GCC Mines, again, I repeat, for GCC factories, remember we're talking GCC factories today. The requirement for GCC factories is that your letter of sobriety can be signed by your employer, and your employer can be your direct supervisor or your one of the senior managers, even an HR manager, whatever. But your employer is just saying that they believe that you have you are a sober-minded person and you can do maintenance and operation. That's it. And if they appoint you as a 2.1, you'll be able to fulfill that function. That's it. So a lot of people struggle to get that letter. And I think the reason for that it goes back to the skills that I was talking about. But to answer that question, the GCC factories, whoever signs your letter of sobriety does not have to have GCC factories. Okay, what advice would you give for someone still studying towards completing their degree? I love this question. So, if you're still studying and you're doing your degree, my advice is go to the Palucraft website, be there all the time, and absorb all the what you call the information that's there. Because whilst you're busy studying, and GCC is something that you want to obtain, when you graduate, you will pick the right employer. Right, that's the first thing. The second thing, if you are still studying, and let's say you are doing like you're an artisan, right? So, or you're doing your end courses, you will already pick the right subjects from the get-go. If you're a national diploma, again, same story. You will start picking the right subject combination. Okay. So if you're still studying, make sure you pick the right subjects, read Palucraft content. Where can I get the books? The books, www.palucraft-gccstudy.com. On top, you click books, and then the books are over there. So the books you can order online, and we deliver anywhere in South Africa, 2 to 5 working days. Thank you guys who are still online. I appreciate it. There's still people online. Let's go through all the questions. Do you guys have a store to buy and collect books instead of courier, etc.? Well, you can come to our offices. Again, you go to our website, you go to contact, then under the contact, our address is there. So we're in 4 ways. You can come to our offices. Then we've got a speed point facility, and you pay with your card, get the books, and yeah, you're good to go. So if you're around Joburg, you can come to our offices and get the books. Right. So Vusi agrees with the point that artisans and the whole issue of artisans and leadership. Guys, this is huge, guys. If there's any artisans that are still online right now, work on your leadership skills, work on your management skills. That's the biggest thing that is killing a lot of artisans from not getting that GMR 2.1 appointment after getting their GCC factories. Supervisor, and they tend to, yeah. No, thanks Vusi, for sharing your experience, man. Appreciate it. Mulife, thanks. How can I get my statement of results for N subjects? I only have a certificate. All right, guys, this is an administrative admin question. Go to your TVET. That's where you get it. Wherever you did your studies, you go to your TVET, and you request for your statement of results. That's it. So that's a very easy question. So wherever you did your TVET, wherever you did your qualification, go there. Thanks, guys, who are still online. Thank you very much. Here's another question here. Oh, thanks, Peggy, for responding on the question about where to get your statement of results. What if you got retrenched in December? Who can sign? You can, if you got retrenched if you got retrenched, you can go to your previous employer to get it signed. That's why I was saying that one of the biggest hurdles with GCC factories is the letter of sobriety. And in the letter of sobriety, a lot of employers don't want to sign it for a person where they see that this person will never be able to handle the role of a 2.1. Because what the letter of sobriety says is that you have at least the qualities, to actually take on the role of a 2.1. So in this presentation today, I went in details what the role of a 2.1 is. And if you can't take on that role, I'm telling you, man, like it's going to be very difficult for you to get that letter. All right, so I've got more questions here. Okay, thanks, guys, for the guys who are still online, still holding on there. Last comment, please give discount to the attendees and UJ grads. Oh, okay, guys. Okay, I've got good news. There is already a discount. If you go to our website, if you're using your computer, top right, you click there where it's written 15% discount. Click here. Click the 15% discount. That 15% is valid until end of February. So go to our website right now, top right corner, you'll see it there. Click to get a 15% discount. Even if you are already a subscriber to our website, click that thing, put your name there, and then it will generate a discount code for you. And then you will use that discount code during checkout for the books and for the online courses. So there's already a 15% discount. Don't worry, I got you there. Are you available for telephonic communication? Yeah. So guys, our number, if you wanna give us a call, look, that's why I was saying that we impact over 2,000 people every year. Every day, I think every week we help about 50 to 60 individuals answering specific questions and whatever. So our number is on our website. So if you go to our website, you'll get our number. It's 011065 9578. So if you go to our website, you'll find our number and we'll gladly answer your call. Please call between 9 and 4 a.m. Don't call at like 7 a.m. No one's going to answer. So anytime between 9 and 4, you will most probably get us here. And if we don't answer, call again, because you find that we might be in another call, right? So call again after 15 minutes or so. So don't give up. Can a person qualify if he or she is not employed in a factory but has worked in a factory as a contractor for more than 2 years? If you worked in a factory as a contractor doing maintenance and operation experience that is aligned with what I was talking about today, the simple answer is yes. But if you've worked in a factory as a contractor, not doing that type of work, then the answer is no. So I'm going to give an example. I know that there's contractors, I work with contractors, technicians, artisans, sometimes engineers, who were contractors to my factory. And the work that they were doing was not maintenance and operation related, but it was maybe maintenance and operation, but on a very like niche element of maintenance and operations. For example, they are contractors to do welding work, right? To cut the pipe, remove pipe, put pipe, right? So they don't deal with the day-to-day what you call maintenance and operation that I've discussed that is required of you from a maintenance and operation point of view for GCC factories. And remember that a contractor does not necessarily appoint a 2.1 appointment when they're doing contracting work in a factory. So they would typically appoint a CR 8.1, which is a construction manager, or a CR 8.7, which is a construction supervisor. So CR is the construction regulations. So it's important to understand the different regulations and which one counts where. Okay, right. Guys, I see we're 18 minutes over our time. I appreciate that you're still around and still listening. We are done with the presentation. We're just going through the specific questions that are asked on the chat here. So I see there's 4 more questions and we are done. All right. So if I have more than 15 years experience, boiler making, fitter, welder, obtained Red Seal 2019, and with certification of senior welding fabrication, Okay, now this is route 3. Route 3, if you are trade tested, trade tests is NQF level sorry, it's N4 level, right? So if you, like, for example, you're a boiler maker or even a welder, your qualification is up to N4, right? So what you need to do is to get your N5 and your N6. Now, in the process of getting your N5 and your N6, you need to make sure that you've got the minimum subjects. So again, which minimum subjects? Go to our website, click blog. In the blog, on the search panel, search subjects. And then when you search subjects, you'll get an article with what the subjects are, all right? So I'm not going to go through what the exact subjects are. So in your specific Goliath, in your specific scenario, make sure that you you get your N5, you get your N6, the minimum subjects. And if it looks like you've been working in a factory environment, then and you've been doing mostly fabrication. If you had been doing fabrication, you might need to get the minimum experience. For Boilermakers, I think it's 3 years maintenance and operation. So you'll still need to do that. International qualification. I think I've already covered that. So should I repeat myself? But in short, international qualifications you must submit to Department of Education, and they will convert that to a South African equivalent. Right. Thank you, Luvuyo. You got this as well, man. Thanks for still being here. Automation is not considered because it needs to be electrical. So all the guys with light current automation, sorry guys, it's not for you. So you need to convert your qualification to heavy current, and then it might be possible, and then get experience on the heavy current stuff and not on your instrumentation and automation side. Okay, answered. All right. All right. So if you've got different employers, you can have one sobriety letter, but you for the letter of experience, you might need both of them to sign, because you will do a letter of experience for this employer, and then they need to support and say, yes, you did that experience. If they don't want to sign, again, take it to a commissioner of oath and then get it signed at the police station or whatever. Cool. Right. Thank you, guys. You're still there. Holding on. 2 more questions and we're done. Right. Right. So what's this one? Okay, Banele, you've got your letter. Don't know if I should start with law in June or plant. What would you suggest? Start with law. I always tell guys to start with law, and one of the reasons for that is I feel like the law exam helps you get the right context and the right mentality, so that by the time you go to the plant exam, your mentality is okay. Now, in the plant exam, remember, under question 3 of the plant exam, it asks safety questions. So it's covering like your OHS management system and other safety related questions. So once you've done your law, your question 3, which is 20 marks, should theoretically be much easier. So start with the law. Simple answer, straight to the point. Right, I think, guys, we're done. Okay, there's 2 more questions that just came in. Oh, guys, you're still holding on. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Okay, 2 more questions, then we're done. Can I pass exam? What is this one? Can I pass exam at FESCO? What is demanded of me, time-wise, knowledge? And the rumor is that people fail at first try. All right, Kabelo, I wish, like, guys who are past students, whatever, were here to show you that it's possible to pass first time. If you go to Google, all right, so on Google, type Palucraft, and then after typing Palucraft, click on Maps, and then on Maps you'll see all the reviews that we've received. Okay, now under the reviews, you'll see that there's a number of reviews where people are saying they've used our material and they've passed the first time. Okay, so go check those reviews and you'll see that it's possible. So what does it take for you to actually pass the first time? I think a lot of that specific question, it takes quite a lot, but we answer that specific question in our books. Not that I'm trying to sell you our books, but the truth is it's answered there. And to go through the nitty-gritties will take a bit of time. But in our books, we answer that question. In our online course, we answer that question. What would it take for you to pass the first time? So if you check that out, check out our books, and yeah, and then you will be okay. All right, guys, I appreciate it. The numbers are dropping fast. People need to go eat. I think we'll close the live shortly. Okay, there's a last question again that just came in. Had it difficult with their guys, it depends, eh? If you struggled with your coursework, would it be difficult here? It depends. Listen to, I think the short answer is follow our strategy and you'll be fine. There's a lot of people who've passed with our strategy, so follow our strategy and you'll be okay. Which should you do first? I've answered that one, Trinity. Do OHS first and then you'll be fine. Okay, guys, thank you for joining the live. I will share our website here, and if there's any other question, visit our website. There's a chat button there on our website. Drop a chat there. We'll respond to you in due course. There you go. There we go. So palucraft-gccstudy.com. And yeah, so welding inspector not covered, so you must be a welder. All right, guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you spending your evening with me, and yeah, we'll see you in the next live. Visit our website, check out our social channels, and yeah, I appreciate your support and I appreciate you joining us today. Good night, guys.